And welcome back to another edition of Breaking Bet. I apologize for all my people on the East Coast. We're really late today. Last week it was about 10 o'clock here. It's 11:30 Eastern time. And you know what? I have to thank my inconsiderate prick of a co-host, Matt Grissom, who's busy checking out the Oregon State Arkansas Friday night series, the Cabada College Baseball Series. Second week in a row, we're at Globe Life Field in Arlington, Texas, home of the world champion Rangers. Matt, you kept us late. I hope that steak and that espresso martini with no Baileys was worth it, my friend.
It was.
Yeah, well, at least you got it with no Baileys because that's like the one strict rule that I have. So thank you for at least accommodating me to that faction.
Yeah, we're classy people.
Yeah, well, all right, Matt, here's the big thing, right? College baseball's opening weekend was really good. We saw a lot of good, a lot of bad. There was a lot of takeaways, but give me some of your biggest takeaways and reactions to the opening weekend.
I'm going to overreact and say that the two teams in the mid-majors we were really high on, UC Santa Barbara and Northeastern, just really shot themselves in the foot. That was not a promising way to start off the season that I thought both of them would do better. I thought Northeastern could beat Arizona. That Arizona is a formidable team. That's fine. But Campbell, shout out to those Camels. They beat UC Santa Barbara. That shocked me. I mean, maybe UC Santa Barbara scored all their runs in the first game and they didn't save any for later. But those were probably my two biggest shockers.
I'm glad you said that because that was kind of that was on my mind as well. I mean, I think Santa Barbara blew their load game one. Matt Ager was always the play. Friday night, we talked about this, bro. Friday night, you back your horses, and Ager is definitely one of the premier Friday night guys in college baseball. What really bothered me about Santa Barbara in particular was they're supposed to have this elite bullpen. Their pitching staff front to back is supposed to be one of maybe the five best in the country. They blew two leads. They came back on Saturday after not being able to score a run on Zach Sabers, a transfer who was originally recruited to Campbell to play outfield, hadn't pitched in 2 years because of an injury. They couldn't score. They finally come back. They have a late lead, 4-3, and then the bullpen unravels. They lose 5-4. Sunday, the same thing. Instead, they get up early this time, and then they end up allowing Campbell to come back off a big 3-run inning. So, I think Santa Barbara is less of an excuse because they're a warm weather team. They're playing out in warm Santa Barbara, California. And, I'm really disgusted there. I understand they were playing a good Campbell team. Even though Campbell's not the team that they were last year or 2 years ago, they're still a really good bunch. But, pitching-wise, I'm not happy to see that. I don't want to overreact, Matt, but I really don't like how Santa Barbara gets their first big test of the year and they fail miserably after jumping a 20 bean in game one.
Yeah, and let's talk about Northeastern because I know you're high on them. You've got a pretty ticket in pocket.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't beat Arizona. What leads you to believe that they're going to be able to go to a regional or super regional and beat a Power 5 school now? Because I don't have any faith.
I mean, here's the thing. With all due respect, Northeastern and I had a really long talk after, their complete no-show this weekend. We had a good heart-to-heart. And I think it's fair maybe because we saw the line where it was at. Northeastern opened up at plus 160 on Friday. Actually, Monday. Monday, the lines opened last week. And our group, we jumped all over it because it was the right play. Northeastern's a great team. We have a lot of expectations. They're too big of a number against an Arizona team that doesn't have pitching or is not supposed to have pitching, and their offense lost their best players. But I think something of note, and I talked with a buddy of mine, actually the kid who was with me in Vegas who hit Northeastern with me at 2,500 to 1. Northeast teams tend to start out slow. They're not as accessible with the nicer weather that are able to play year-round on a ball field like some of these teams that are coming from warm weather places are. So I'm not ready to panic by any means. It's the opening week. They showed a gritty win on Saturday by coming back and winning 8-7. The thing is, remember what I talked about all series? I said Arizona, while losing Chase Davis and they lost Mac Bingham, this is a team that had success last year on offense because they do something that is almost like a lost art in this day and age of baseball. They pepper you to death with base hits, even with it doesn't matter who's in the lineup. Base hit after base hit, they could string 4 or 5 hits together, and that's what they did. So, Arizona, I expect to be doing that this year. Like that doesn't catch me by surprise, but it's more of the fact that their pitching was a lot better than I thought it would be against what's supposed to be a really good Husky lineup.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I wanted Northeastern to win. Don't get me wrong. I thought that was a big series for them to kind of see where they are in the grand scheme of things. And it may be a bit of an overreaction.
Mm-hmm.
They may be just fine, but they didn't bring it that weekend. And that was disappointing.
Definitely not. Thank you, our friend California Wager, friend of the show. Best of luck this season, fellas. Let's keep cashing it. Absolutely. My guy Tone, this is my boy from Tampa. Let's go, baby. And then we got our boy Sean from Vegas. That is only in Vegas at Legacy Club. I'm not sure what he's talking about. Maybe espresso martinis, no bellies.
Espresso martini.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then Trey, yeah, we're going to get to that Indiana game. Don't worry. Line's moving on that as well. But, Matt, before we get back to the Week 2 Friday slate, 2 teams in terms of the positive direction I wanted to talk about. And I was pretty vocal in my tweeting about this. Oregon State validated what I was saying preseason on this podcast. This is the best lineup in the country, top to bottom, the best, the deepest. They are every bit of an Omaha team that I thought they would. And, Aiden May looked good. Transfer from Arizona looked really good on Friday. Granted, they didn't play great competition, but you kind of saw them take advantage of the layups that they had. Not every team did that. Not every top team was able to capitalize on the gimmies. Aiden May looked good. And, what I wrote up about Oregon State on RotoWire in my preseason articles was if they're pitching, their veteran pitching could be competent and complement this offense. I think the lineup is going to be good enough to carry them where they want to go. And they passed all the tests through their first 5 games.
Yeah, I think most impressively, they had the midweek against Texas Tech. I was on Oregon State. I didn't make that vocal because everybody else seemed to like Texas Tech, but Oregon State was a slam dunk play. I mean, they've got more depth in pitching. They've got the bats. Texas Tech, which they shot themselves in the foot several times in that game and probably could have capitalized to make it closer than what it was, but I think they won 10-4, and it really was never a contest. Oregon State jumped out early, and they hit often. And unfortunately for the Texas Tech backers, they didn't look the part.
Anybody looking to play Oregon State all year, the Pac-12, their competition is not going to be good. They should run away with this conference. I think they can win this conference by 7 or 8 games. They have a couple series against Stanford and USC. That's going to be interesting. But this is going to be a team that probably is going to be scoring a lot of 10-run games and probably cashing a lot of overs this season. Matt, the next team I want to talk about is the Duke Blue Devils. I was talking about them on this podcast as well, saying there's 8 teams that go to Omaha. I think they kind of follow suit this year and finish where they did last year, maybe being like the 9th or 10th team, just missing that top 8 cutoff. And I stated it was because the offense. I wasn't confident in it, but they played really good competition. They played in tough Indiana team and they played Coastal. They won in versatile ways. The hitting looked phenomenal. They teed off 11 home runs against George Mason on Saturday. They did well enough against Coastal. They lit up Indiana. And I feel like this offense, I saw what I needed to see from them to complement maybe the best pitching staff front to back in the nation. And Duke also has the makings to be a team that could win it all now. I wasn't sold. I had to see where the hitting was. I don't want to overreact, but I think it's there. And as a result, Oregon State and Duke both moved big time in the futures market. Oregon State a little less, moved from 25-1 to 18-1. But Duke, and I tweeted this out on Sunday night or Monday night. I think it was Sunday night. I tweeted it out. I was putting in a half unit on Duke at 70-1. I woke up Monday morning, Duke was 40-1. So the entire nation stood up, as well as the sports book, and took notice of what the Duke Blue Devils did, and they were on display. And definitely two teams that are going to be or should be playing in late June in Omaha, Nebraska.
I could definitely see it. They, as a team, they average 1.166 OPS and a 2.50 ERA. That's a recipe of success right there if they can sustain it throughout the season.
So Duke's got a gimme series this weekend. So, unless you're putting them in a parlay, which you could do, but you're not going to get the odds on them. They're playing Northwestern. They're opening up at a -620 favorite tomorrow with Jonathan Santucci on the mound. You're not really going to do that this week. I mean, maybe you could look at some run lines when they come out tomorrow morning. So we're going to start it off with probably what is the game of the week down where you are, which is why you're down in Texas. That's the Oregon State Beavers and the Arkansas Razorbacks. Prime time Friday night baseball. Hagen Smith versus Aiden May. Razorbacks, a slight -130 favorite on a neutral field. Matt, you going with your Razorbacks, or is just Oregon State too much?
I mean, how can you not say Oregon State's the right side when they've just looked so damn impressive? And Hagen Smith did not have his stuff. He complained that there was a grip issue with as cold as it was in Fayetteville. It was mid-30s, so I get it. But, for a guy that came into the season looking like a top 10 potential draft pick, was one of the shorter shots as a pitcher for the Golden Spikes. He did not look good. 27 ERA. Under the hood, 5+ Sierra is promising, I guess, because at the end of the day, he didn't have any help on defense, but he was a lot of the problem. I mean, it's good that Will McIntyre came in and could shut the door on Indiana State, or not Indiana State, but James Madison of winning that game, even though they jumped out at a 3-0 lead. Hagen's got to bring it. And if we get good Hagen, I think Arkansas wins. But when I texted the group, Oregon State should be the favorite here, and I was afraid that Arkansas might be because of the number 2 beside their name. But the stats don't lie, and our projections have 7-6 Oregon State in a win.
Yeah, I texted my buddy at the beginning of the week, maybe Monday or Tuesday, and I was like, I'm really looking forward to this game right here. And I personally think the book is going to set the line where Arkansas is going to be a small favorite because of their ranking. And because of who's pitching. And I was right. And I was hoping that because I was like, I want to take Oregon State a plus money or even money as it is right now. And I just think the problem is this Oregon State offense is a buzzsaw. And, I love Hagen Smith. I really do. I think he's going to be a star. He's a lefty touching 101 with an 82-mile-an-hour slide piece. That's a wipeout pitch. I think he's going to be really good in the big leagues. But in my research in the offseason, one thing I noticed about Hagen Smith is the glaring inefficiencies in his game. Walked 42 guys in about 72 innings last year. And out of all of his starts, he made 11 starts last year because don't forget, he was in that hybrid role where he was asked to close games or he was asked to open games and only go 3 innings or come in the middle and eat up some innings. But he made 11 starts last year. He never went 6 innings one time. His furthest outing was 5 2/3. He hit 5 innings 6 times. He was racking up at least 84 pitches in all but 3 of those starts. And you just got to think if this guy is going to get off to another rough start like he did against James Madison, Oregon State jumps out to a 3 or 4-0 lead after 2 innings. I just don't know if Arkansas is going to have enough offense because let's not forget something. Oregon State can hit the ball over the fence, but this is an offense that can draw the walk, get some steals, and just string together 3, 4, 5 base hits in a row. They don't need the home run ball. I feel like Arkansas, their offense is a little bit more, predicated on trying to get a long ball after getting 1 or 2 guys on base. I just don't know if the Razorbacks are going to be able to do that. And if Aiden May is just competent, he doesn't even have to be that good. He's got to be like 5 innings, 3 runs. And I feel like Oregon State's going to have a good chance. I love the Beavers in this spot. I think the wrong team is favored. And, this could even be a 2-unit play for me on the Beavs.
The one caveat I would say is that they are playing in a big league ballpark. So I'm curious to see how Oregon State's bats translate. Now, obviously, they played Tuesday or Wednesday against Texas Tech here in Arlington, and they scored 10 runs without really any issue. So Hagen Smith, like I said, he better be good Hagen, or we're in for a long day.
Luckily for you guys, you're playing in a tournament and you don't have to face Oregon State in a 3-game set. So you get a little bit of a break there in terms of the pitching breakdown. And news here, as we're live on the air, wonder if anybody's listening and decided to bet it. That's why it's moving. But Arkansas is now only a -120 favorite. Oregon State is moved out to -110. It's moving near a pick'em. And something I tweeted out when I gave out my Oregon State play a few hours ago was I really think by the time game time happens tomorrow, we might see Oregon State as the favorite here. I feel like a lot of money is going to come in on the Beavers. It's still too short in my opinion. I'd probably make Oregon State's fair price here -140. If it gets out past -140 against a team like Arkansas, at that point, the Razorbacks would probably be a +110 favorite. Then I think that's where I would pull the plug on backing the Beavers. But rest assured, man, this is going to be an Omaha type of fight. I firmly expect to see these two teams battling it out in late June.
I would be as far as to say that the winner of this game Friday night will probably be one of the final 4 teams in Omaha.
I think they could both be 2 of the final 4 teams, but also one more thing to consider before we move on to the next game, which is my second favorite game of the week. This game means a lot more for Oregon State in terms of the RPI. Arkansas is going to have their chances. They're going to play the SEC. They're going to play dominant competition all year long, and they're going to rack up a lot of wins. Oregon State doesn't have the luxury of having a lot of RPI driving games, which is big for the committee. You'd still think Oregon State's going to be a top 8 seed in hosting. But if they want to grab like a 2, a 3, or a 4 seed, they're going to have to win a game like this, because at the end of the year, when the committee's looking at this, they're going to circle this game, which might be their most important game of the regular season, and say, hey, they beat Arkansas. They beat Hagen Smith. They deserve to be the number 2 or 3 seed and hosting not only a regional, but a super regional out in Corvallis as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I think Oregon State's the right side right now.
Yeah,
but if you're going to sit here and bet up Oregon State to where you can get Arkansas +1.5, then we may need to reconsider.
I think that's a good middle too, because I do expect this game going down to the wire. So if for some reason Oregon State rushes out to that -135, -140 favorite before game time, and you're able to grab Arkansas +1.5 at like -130, I don't think it's a terrible idea to shoot for a middle, because there's a chance you win both. And if you lose one, you're not going to get hurt too bad. You'd lose maybe $30, $40 if you're putting a full $100 unit on it with the VIG, of course. So I don't think that's a bad spot there for this play.
Yeah. And after seeing the team at check-in, they're relaxed. This is a no pressure, like they're here to have fun. They're happy to be here playing at Globe Life. Like, this is what you want as a fan in a team. They're very relaxed. So we'll see what happens.
I'll be curious to see what kind of total we get on this game tomorrow. I probably would say this is going to be in a 12.5, 13.5.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, I think 12.5, 11.5.
Okay, let's move on to the next game. This Oregon State Arkansas is 1A for me, but 1B is without a doubt Trey Savage and the East Carolina Pirates going to UNC to face the Tar Heels. UNC's 4-0, ECU's 3-1. Trey Savage against the rookie freshman Folger Bowes. again, I think the wrong team is favored here, Matt. Trey Savage is going to be one of the first arms off the board. I actually think he'd be a great fit for the New York Mets at number 19 because I think he's right on the cusp of that top 15, top 20 range. And interesting note here. Again, this is a play I wrote up for RotoWire for tomorrow. Check it out on rotowire.com. You'll see my 2 plays involving Oregon State and ECU, although I'm kind of giving away the results here. But Trey Savage pitched against UNC in one of the first games last year of the Pirate season. Early season matchup. It was Savage against Max Carlson of UNC, who's no longer on the team. Savage went 6 innings, gave up 3 hits, 1 walk, 1 earned run, punched out 8. Unhittable. I don't know what changes this time around. And you're getting plus money with him, or even money.
I think the biggest issue is, can the East Carolina bats come alive? Folger Boas is not a bad pitcher by any means. He's coming in with a 1.8 ERA. So if it comes down to bats and pitching is basically a scratch, I kind of lean North Carolina.
Here's my thing, right? So Folger Bowes was against Wagner. That was a tune-up game. And honestly, Wagner was close to stealing one. It was a big inning that turned one of the games. I forget if it was Saturday or Sunday. My thing is, East Carolina's offense is never one that's going to be near the top of the board, but they do a lot of the little things right, good fundamentals, and they terrorize you because they just keep coming. It's the resilience of the Cliff Godwin program. And, they're probably not going to win this game 11-4. It's going to be a 7-6 or a 7-5 kind of game. I think East Carolina with Trey Savage, I don't know how you don't take that because, I like this UNC offense led by my guy Vance Honeycutt, who I think is this generation Trey Turner. He was one of my guys for the Golden Spikes coming into the year. It's a good offense. You got Parks Harbor coming over from Georgia. You got Alberto Ozuna. But I feel like there's too much swing and miss in this UNC offense. I do think East Carolina for me would be the side, and the market agrees with me because as I'm looking at the screen right now, East Carolina has moved out to minus 105 and UNC's come down to minus 125. And, like I said, man, it's Friday night. I'm going with the horse, and Trey Savage is definitely a horse.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's going to be a close game. You could coin flip it either way. Value pitching, value hitting. It's a coin flip.
Well, you would definitely go with UNC at the current price, or even at minus 125. You will go with it if you go at minus 130.
I'm looking up Savage right now, his under the hood stats.
Yeah, while you look at the under the hood,
I want to look at Sierra. I want to look at the Sierra.
You love the Sierra. Are you becoming an analytics guy on me?
2.8. So Folger Boas had 2.86 Sierra with a 1.8 ERA. So he actually did pretty well
against Wagner.
I get it, but let's see how much that defense helped Trey Savage. Okay, Trey Savage had a 0.75 Sierra.
It's one sport though. Like you have a sample size.
I know. Still, and let me qualify that. It is still a very small sample size, but this is what I benefited from last season is handicapping the stats. We're moneyballing, Johnny. Trey Savage, it was the better pitcher. So that leads me to believe that if he does much of the same against the North Carolina offense that is better, ECU is probably the right side. And I actually already bet ECU.
Good. At even money. Well, you could have let off with that. I mean, bro, how many espresso martinis did you have?
Then it wouldn't be fun.
Yeah, but how many espresso martinis did you have?
Just one. But with every bet I make, I want to try to make a case for the other side. And it didn't work. You saw it in live action. You don't get that outside of midnight Eastern.
Yeah.
Handicapping college baseball on the fly. 0.75 Sierra versus a 2+. Trey Savage is a real deal. We're
I
here.
know he is.
Go
I
Pirates.
don't need Sierra to tell me Trey Savage is the real deal, bro. I mean, not for nothing. If you weren't on so late right now, I'd be in my 100th dream, dreaming of Trey Savage carving up this UNC lineup. That's what I.
You've got
That's what
plenty
I'd
of
be
time for
dreaming
that. You've got
of. I know.
plenty of time for that.
One more point here. I do think this is going to be a series that's going to go to Sunday. I feel like if I was capping this, it's going to be ECU on Friday, UNC on Saturday, and then I think Sunday is going to be that coin flip game. I'd probably go with ECU. I do think they're the better team. I feel like for the last few years, the Tar Heels just a little overrated, bro. They got the star power, but I just think they're incomplete as a team. So really, it's a knock. Like, the big thing for me was the Tar Heel pitching coming into the year, while on paper was supposed to be better than what it was last year. It's still not impressive to me. Like, we haven't seen enough of it. And, I think maybe I'm looking at what happened last season, but, show me where they have some horses in the pen. Show me where they have a guy that's a capable 2 or 3 starter that's going to get me off of going with ECU, who's the more battle-tested program, who is just it's cardiac in the jungle every single time when it comes to the ECU Pirates.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know who owns the series, the long term, or even just over the last few years.
Matt, all right, let's go with your guy next. We got Brody Brecht as an even money dog against the Auburn Tigers. Now, it's funny because you gave me a ton of shit when I said this on our preseason podcast. Don't be surprised to see Brody Brecht come out with a lot of struggles in his first game against Seton Hall. And yes, his stuff, he might have the best pure stuff in the sport. Him and Chase Burns, that's a real capability. It's a real possibility. He issued 6 walks and a hit batter in 4-3 against Seton Hall. That's why I like the Pirates. And by the way, Matt, if Seton Hall was a better team, if that was a better offense he played that could capitalize with those runners on base, Iowa very well might lose that game. Do you think Brody Brecht bounces back a little sharper this time around against a much better offense in the SEC?
I mean, there's Auburn's still batting under 1,000 OPS as a team. I think Brody Brecht's biggest problem has always been control. If you get good Brody Brecht, which I feel like he steps up when the game matters more, he's going to bounce back in this game. So I bet Iowa. I think that's the right side. I think Brody Brecht, as far as a pure ace standpoint, they're going to be able to handle Auburn, who is a mid to low tier SEC school.
I mean, listen, Iowa really pissed me off on Sunday. They ruined my entire day. Iowa Sunday morning by losing to Lehigh at 10 a.m. Eastern time on opening weekend ruined my entire day. And you know what? Like, they had pretty good outings from Marcus Morgan and Brody Brecht. It was here and there, but they couldn't score. They weren't facing anybody that was that difficult on the mound. And like, listen, Auburn's pitching it's high powered, but it's very inconsistent as well. It's supposed to be Chase Allsup tomorrow. Chase Allsup's another guy that's near in triple digits. He's the kind of guy that can get his ass beat. He's the kind of guy that doesn't necessarily have the best command, but I do think Auburn's going to be able to score enough on Brody Brecht because, again, this is the same point we touched a few weeks ago. Iowa's not going to let him go out there for 6 or 7 innings. They're going to probably cap him at 5 unless he's got a really efficient pitch count, which usually is not the case with him because he racks up a lot of Ks and a lot of walks. So, the Iowa pitching might only have to give up like 4 or 5 runs to lose because their offense can't score. Their offense is terrible. And my guy, I'm sorry, I forgot his name on Twitter, but he's like addicted to the totals. And he's just like, every time Iowa goes under, it's like Iowa's 3-0 to the under. Iowa's 4-0 to the under. So Iowa's the under team. I just don't know how many runs they're going to be able to score even against an inconsistent Chase also.
Yeah, I mean, Chase also played Eastern Kentucky gave up 5 runs. So, I mean, it's doable if Iowa plays well. But they play – is this a 3-game series or are they in a – they're in a
No, they're in a
tournament? The
tournament.
Jacksonville – yeah.
Yeah, Jacksonville, yeah.
So, I think, honestly, and shout out Noah Beanick, he brought this up, and Marcus Morgan may be the better pitcher on that team. I mean, just from a pure analytics standpoint, Brody Breck's got the stuff, but as far as a collegiate pitcher, I think Morgan's the real deal. So just back Iowa in this one. If Brody Breck lets you down, double it up and bet Iowa tomorrow with Marcus Morgan or Saturday.
No, I'm not doing that. We're going to go on opposite sides here. I'm going to take the Auburn Tigers, bro. It's weird because every time last year I doubted the Auburn Tigers, I said the same thing you said. They're like an average SEC team. But it's weird because they sometimes get these really good pitching performances because they have high variance guys on the mound, but they have an offense that could score. They're led by Ike Irish, bro. Ike Irish is possibly a top 10 pick in next year's draft. They just find ways to score runs. And like I said, I don't think they're going to have to score 10 runs to win this game. I think the first to 5 probably wins. If I'm putting on my analysis cap, I think first to 5 has probably a 90% chance to win. I don't know if I see Iowa scoring 5 runs, dude. I don't.
I mean, you make a good point. But how good is Eastern Kentucky? Like, yeah, that's awesome. Y'all padded stats against Eastern Kentucky, Auburn. But on the flip side, Iowa played Seton Hall, Ball State. Yeah, Lehigh sucked 8-4. But then I don't know. I mean, you're probably right. They're averaging 5 runs a game. But again, you go back to pitching, and I think Iowa is far and away better at pitching than Auburn is. So where
their bullpen didn't look that good on Sunday. Their bullpen was having some trouble there. And here's the thing: I understand. My philosophy is back the horses on Friday night, and I think because you're getting Brody Brecht and Iowa at even money against a team that is very hittable in Auburn, it's tempting. I don't hate it. Like, again, for my money, if the run line drops tomorrow and the price stays about where it's at and you can get Auburn at like minus 130 on the plus 1.5, again, it's probably the same kind of handicap as the Arkansas-Oregon State game. Maybe you try to shoot for the middle, and if you lose, you don't lose too much, and if you win both. You're gonna limit the damage. It's just that's the optics of it is you're getting Brody Brecht. Like, I think Iowa tomorrow could be a trendy dog because everyone's like, oh, Brody Brecht against a pitcher that has a 5 ERA, a pitcher that didn't have a great season last year. It's definitely a possibility. But, like, I got to see it a little bit more from Brody Brecht. I don't love this Iowa team this year. There is so much hype on them coming into the year. And it's funny because I don't even think they're the best team in their conference.
That's a good transition to talk about Indiana, who may be the best team in the Big Ten.
How about my guy Trey? Sorry, buddy. He's worth the wait, though, because we're talking about the Indiana Hoosiers, who opened up at minus 150, moved out to minus 160 against Baylor, and they're throwing Braden Reisdorf. The Hoosiers got a really good start on opening day from Reisdorf, battling Jonathan Santucci. This was a tight ball game through 5 innings. Then once Reisdorf came out, Pandora got let out of the box, kid. Duke teed off on them. But, the Baylor Bears are not the Duke Blue Devils. Mason Marriott had a good start. I think it was against Nebraska last Friday afternoon. I don't know how you don't go Indiana here.
Yeah, I laid it with Indiana. I think minus 150 is fair. You're still getting a good team, undervalued. I personally would have made Indiana more like minus 200. So I had to bet the Huskers here, or the Hoosiers here.
So just to be clear, you would bet Indiana out to minus 200. Like, if we wake up tomorrow and it's 7:00 Eastern time and that line is Indiana minus 195, minus 200 against Baylor. You're laying that.
Yeah, I mean, Baylor's not very good. We saw that. And I as good as Mason Marriott may have looked early, I just think Indiana is a far more superior team over Baylor.
I agree with that. I get worried a little bit about the Indiana bullpen. That's one of my big concerns on that team this year. But to be honest, bro, Reisdorf looked phenomenal. This team can hit. I gave this out at 150 a few hours ago. I'd probably play this out to minus 175, 180. But, I would think Indiana is going to get off the board with a solid win on a Friday night in week 2 to keep racking up those dubs, getting closer to a playoff berth in early June.
Yeah, Baylor is a team hitting 751 OPS. Their team ERA is 6.17. Compared to Indiana, a team ERA of 3.25 and an OPS of 9 something. I lost it. 9.26. So, I mean, they've got the advantage on both sides of the ball.
Baylor wasn't bad the opening weekend. I was actually a little bit more surprised. They played pretty well considering the competition they had to go against. But they were hanging with Tennessee for a little bit on Sunday. I was surprised. I thought Tennessee might give that game away. Baylor was hanging with them for about the first 5 innings or so, and then Billy Amick happened. Billy Amick was born. He starts hitting tatas into the third deck, and by that point it was too late.
Matt, I just think Indiana is going to be too much.
Yeah, agreed. Matt, kick me off here. This is a game I haven't gotten involved in. I don't know if I'm going to get involved in for Friday, but maybe a Saturday or Sunday, depending on how, which way the wind blows. UCLA Bruins. They're actually a big 135 at TCU. TCU was opening up at minus 160. Money coming in on the Frogs. Are you laying it? Did you see enough last weekend against Gulf Coast?
I mean, TCU may be thinking they're lucky stars. They may be the luckiest team to be 4-0 at this point, but I've got to believe that they get it right. UCLA looked impressive. Their team average OPS is over 1,000. Their ERA is 2.67 compared to much worse from TCU. They've got a 6.94 ERA and a 1,028 OPS. I mean, but you're going into Fort Worth. You just showed that you can win in those gritty moments where it matters most. They came back and won. This is still a very young team. I think TCU's the right side here. I don't see UCLA coming in here and pulling the upset over Peyton Tolley going tonight and then Friday night and then Cole Klecker going Saturday. I just don't see how they get a win on either one of those two. Zach Morris, that's another story. Former Hog. I think he gave up 90 runs in his last start for TCU. But I don't think Klecker and Tolley give it up.
That's not the same Zach Morris that was on Saved by the Bell, in case anybody was wondering. That's a different Zach Morris entirely. On paper, I want to agree with you. Again, kind of like UNC, I think UCLA is one of those overrated teams. They were actually ranked as having, I think, the best transfer and or freshman class for this year. A lot of young talent on this Bruins team, but they had their own struggles this past weekend. They easily could have lost 1 or 2 of those games. You have to refresh my memory on who they played.
Gonzaga. They won 8-7 in the first game. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. So I'm not ready to fade the Horned Frogs against the Bruins. The problem is, even though Peyton Tolley's on the mound, I don't know if I'm buying the Frogs in terms of being bettable right now. The Frogs are one of my Final 8 teams. I think they're going to have a great year. I think they're going to win the Big 12 regular season. It's a big price, and I think it speaks volumes that it's a big top 25 matchup. and TCU is garnering a lot of money right now. I feel like I want to see it, though. I mean, Gulf Coast is no slouch. We talk about it all the time on this podcast. Teams, mid-majors, randos from Florida, Texas, and California always field good ball clubs. That's just what they do. There's a surplus of talent in those states. But I think it's a little heavy for my taste. I don't know if I'd lay more than 160, 165. Maybe if some buyback comes in on UCLA and this gets back down to a minus 160, minus 165 price, then I would get in. But most likely for me, this game is a pass, and I just want to enjoy it and watch it. And then, kind of see what happens Friday night and then jump in on Saturday with Cole Klecker. Because I'm going to back the TCU pitching staff.
Yeah, I agree. I think TCU wins. Your problem with UCLA, strike out Deuce Gorson, strike out Cody Shire, and you're good. Everybody else is below 1,000 OPS. As far as starting pitching, I have not seen. Do we know who's going for UCLA?
I haven't seen that. You're in charge of keeping the Excel sheet.
Luke Jewett, I think, was the first starter. He had a 408 Sierra compared to Peyton Tolley, who, this is why I love Sierra. 2.64 Sierra, but a 12 ER. That wasn't his fault. The kid's got stuff. Peyton Tolley, TCU, just go ahead and lay it. There's no way they lose to UCLA.
So you mentioned Sierra a couple times. For the people that don't know what that is, can you elaborate a little bit more on what it is and why it's becoming a useful stat, especially when you're analyzing matchups for betting?
So it stands for Skilled Interactive Earn Run Average. So what it's doing is eliminating the factors outside of the pitcher's control. So if the defense doesn't play well on a play and a ball gets by them, it's not going against the pitcher. It is more of a under the hood look of what the pitcher actually is throwing. So rather than another advanced analytic like XFIP, which does calculate what the defense contributes, Sierra is specifically designed for the pitcher only and the things that are under their control. So if you really want to measure a pitcher's success on the mound, look at Sierra.
So is
removing every other factor.
It's like an expected ERA. This is what his ERA should have been.
Yes.
Like expected batting average. I mean, that makes sense. I know you talk about it all the time, and, I don't really use that much. I think also you pay for a couple extra subscriptions for access to that information than I do. But, I mean, listen, no wonder why you're putting up all these big units last couple of years. You have stats like Sierra that you constantly reference. Matt, we have an interesting game here out west. That's the Arizona Wildcats against the San Diego Toreros, who did give the Texas Longhorns a little bit of trouble this past weekend. Little bit of a favorite at minus 135 for Zona against San Diego. You think you're laying it with Arizona?
I don't know. This is going to be one that I want to watch and then handicap further throughout the series.
For me, I played Arizona here. I played Arizona, and the reason is because
you fell in love with them.
No,
you fell in love with them.
I did not.
They beat Northeastern.
No, I did not. I think it's simply because this is a team that is going to be able to just hit and hit and hit and hit and keep on hitting until the cows come home. And it's weird because they don't have great pitching. Their rotation is grotesque, but somehow it works for them. And San Diego, I think they gave it the old college try, but I don't know if they're going to have enough firepower to keep up with an Arizona offense that can string together a bunch of hits, end up with 12 hits in a game and 8 runs per se. It's a short price, and I feel like Arizona is going to be one of those teams I'm going to keep my eye on throughout the year, because they're going to have certain matchups where I'm going to really like to take advantage of them, because, like I said, they can score. They're dangerous on offense.
So do you think the books have it wrong? Like, because I just looked at the stats, San Diego did play terrible from the advanced analytics standpoint. Do you think that they think this is UC San Diego?
No,
Like,
no,
what?
I don't think so.
Because I was talking to Jeff Davis at Circa about that, and he was like, why is Texas not minus 400 versus San Diego? Like, they should wax them.
Well, they lost a game.
That's true. I don't know. The line seems fishy, though.
You think it's like
why
a trap?
such a short number on Arizona?
Maybe because they're on the road? I think the Toreros are going to get one. I don't think Arizona's coming in with a clean sweeperoo. I'm not saying break out the brooms and the dustpans. I think San Diego's going to get one. I just don't know which day it's going to be. But
well, Johnny, we're trying to win people money here. Jackson Kent, is he going to start for Arizona?
He dominated Northeastern.
ERA.
He dominated Northeastern. Here's the problem, right? Here's the problem that I've noticed so far. Every time you think you're backing a team against an opponent because your team has the pitching advantage, that's blown up in my face a couple times. Perfect example was Northeastern. Wyatt Scotty against Jackson Kent. Jackson Kent was terrible last year. Wyatt Scotty had a pretty good season. I backed the better pitcher. It blew up in my face. And you know, I picked that up the other day, and it worked out pretty well because just because you have the better pitcher doesn't necessarily mean you're going to win. It's really weird, but you know, neither of these guys are going to be throwing true horses, and the pitching can almost be determined as a wash, and you're going with the better offense. And it just, if the pitching isn't that much of a dominant edge, then I think that's where you have to take a step back. Perfect example was tonight. I backed Grand Canyon in a parlay with San Diego, or I'm sorry, not San Diego, Arizona State, because Grand County had Daniel Avidia throwing. That's a decent edge, but it's not that big of an edge to where it's like, for instance, Matt Ager last Friday of Santa Barbara against Derek Vartanian of Campbell. It's got to be a noticeable edge. These like 60-40 edges, and you're taking in favor of the 60% in terms of this pitcher is better by a small-ish margin, is not enough of a difference necessarily. You have to take these guys that are big difference makers, like a Trey Savage or a Santucci or a Hagen Smith, usually Hagen Smith. But if it's not that
27 ERA, Hagen Smith, no.
Exactly. If it's not that decisive, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work, that you're taking the better pitcher in that matchup.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, we got a couple more here before we wrap it up. We have a game that I'm interested in to get your opinion on. I don't know if I'm going to put out a play for it. It's the Portland Pilots at the USC Trojans. And the Trojans are not playing in Southern California. They're playing at UC Irvine because their field's under construction this year. They're out to minus 166. It should be Caden Aoki. It's worth noting the Trojans have started 0-4 on the year. Do you think it's a good time for them to get their first win against Portland with their Friday guy on the mound?
They should. I like Caden Aoki, and I was high on this USC Trojans team outside of them having to travel an hour and a half to play at the great park of Irvine, California. Andy Stankiewicz is a very good coach. I think USC just kind of got the shit end of the stick as far as their start to the season. I do think this is going to be a formidable team that you could back throughout the year. I know nothing about the Portland Pilots, so I cannot confidently tell you one way or the other as I look them up. Go ahead, feel free to stall for a minute, but I've got to believe the USC Trojans get it right here.
That's what I was thinking. I don't know if I'm going to officially put this one out yet, but anytime you get Caden Aoki on the mounds, this is a really good pitcher. And like you said, USC got off to a little bit of a rough start, but we both expect them to be competitive this year. Probably field of 64 bound. I don't know if I'm going to lay the 166 because I haven't seen enough to confidently back a big number with this team, but I feel like they're not a bad little toss in a money line parlay. I feel like parlays can be plus EV in this sport, believe it or not. It's not a typical thing that somebody would tell you, but you get a lot of these chalk teams early in the year that usually deliver. And when you're backing the best pitchers, like an Aoki with, I don't know, let's say a Trey Savage or a Santucci or a LeBaron Johnson of Texas, then it can become a very winnable proposition.
Their bats are horrible. Southern
Portland?
Cal. They only had one guy bat over 1,000 OPS. Everybody else is 833, and then you're going down to like 381 and lower. OPS. Like, that's bad. They got no run support from a pitching staff that's pretty good with Eric Hammond, Tyler Stromsburg, and Caden Aoki. The bats better wake up if they're going to beat Portland.
Maybe an under tomorrow, maybe a Friday night under. Hopefully this gets out to like 11 and a half, 12, and we take a little underoo.
They're just both bad. Portland's OPS for a team is .572. Southern Cal is .450. I mean, it's bad. These are two teams can't swing.
Sounds like an under, my friend. Sounds like a low scoring, like 3-2 kind of game where we're just hoping that no runs come home. This would be an interesting.
Portland does have the pitching advantage. 3.90 team ERA compared to a 5.04.
Yeah, but what about the start?
Yeah, and Aoki was a 5 ERA.
Yeah, that's off one start.
Yep.
I mean, I'm not going to over exaggerate a one start sample size, but I do think this is an interesting underplay if it's somewhere along the lines of 11 and a half, 12. Hopefully it does come out to be that on the higher side, because from what it sounds like, the fair number is more along the lines of like a 9.5, like a typical 2022 Friday night 9.5 point run line total. I think for me, that's probably something I would look to keep my eye on for tomorrow night. It's going to be one that is going to be in play. Nothing official yet, but I kind of wanted to gauge your interest on this game just to give a precursor in case we get a favorable total tomorrow afternoon.
Yeah, well, it's on my radar. I do want to see what the field dimensions are for where USC is playing there. Orange County Great Park is what it's called. I'm going to try to look up some field dimensions, make sure it's not a little shoebox in the stadium. But, yeah, I mean, under seems like a pretty good play.
Too bad the Nerfies aren't available in college baseball. We got to get those on. Nerfies all day. We
had it in the national championship.
I know, but these are special markets, and it's only because it was such a highly anticipated event with all the top prospects going, with Skeens and Louder and Waldrop and Florida and LSU and Wake, and it's just that was a special event. Last highlighted matchup here, Matt. We got my Mississippi State Bulldogs hosting Georgia Southern, one of the peskier mid-major programs. Big line here at home for the Bulldogs after dropping 2 midweek games to Austin Peay. They absolutely collapsed last night. I think they were up 4 runs in the 8th inning, and they just melted down. I think Mississippi State, this is a real good get-right spot for them. Their starting rotation, I told you at the beginning of the year, before the year started, that this could be a pretty well-turned-around starting rotation. They should have Nate Dom going tomorrow. I feel confident that Mississippi State could end up sweeping this series because this is a team that cannot fall far behind in the SEC if they have hopes to be playing baseball in June. Nate Dom, Mississippi State, on a bounce back. Your Honor, no objections.
You know I'm not high on this Mississippi State team. I think Georgia Southern wins at least one of the 3. I wouldn't be surprised if they win the series, though.
Not against my guy Durangelo Senja.
Ugh.
Looked like a stud, bro. Did you watch him pitch on Sunday? He was mowing Air Force down.
No, I didn't. It was Air Force.
Air Force isn't a terrible program.
No.
They're solid.
I don't know. I think you're smoking the peace pipe here with Mississippi State.
Yeah, and I think you had too many espresso martinis at dinner.
Probably, but they're batting 774 OPS. They've got a team ERA of 4.6. That's not going to cut it in SEC play, and I don't think it's going to cut it against Georgia Southern.
You do understand there's a 4 or 5 game sample size that you're reading off of.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I'm not that concerned about it. I wouldn't like 190. That is going to be probably a leg in a parlay at some point this weekend.
Let me tell you
something.
I do think
they take the series, Matt.
Mississippi State shouldn't be laying minus 190 against anybody, even Austin Peay, who they just lost to.
I hate you.
Georgia Southern's better than Austin Peay.
Georgia Southern's a solid program. I got no doubts about that. Just dropping 2 in a row, 2 midweek games. I feel like the Bulldogs, Chris Lamonis is going to have his boys ready to roll on a nice little comeback.
Chris Lamonis needs to be fired. Just
how
like
about you need
Mike
to be
Bianco
fired
at Ole Miss.
How about you need to be fired? Leave Chris Lamonis.
The Mississippi schools are dog shit. I don't know why you invest money into them.
I don't invest money in Ole Miss. Let's get that straight. They had their fun. They won back-to-back championships in 21 and 22. It's time to take it on the chin a little bit. But Mississippi State's done that the last 2 years. It's time for a turnaround. It's time for new blood. We got some dogs on this Bulldog team, kid. Recognize. Matt, give me a couple underdogs that are worth a look to you this weekend that we did not touch on. Series, Friday night games, teams that you want to see progress throughout the weekends. What do you got?
I think I went through all my bets. I like Georgia Southern. I bet them. I took Iowa, even money. Indiana, minus 150. Oregon State, even money. And TCU laid the 160. That's all I got.
One team.
Let me look at the board. Well, I was about to say, I know you want to talk. So you do that while I'll look up the board, see if there's anything else that sticks out to me.
Underdog-wise, there's one team that I think can take one. And I put a little sprinkle on them for tomorrow night. That's the Penn State Nittany Lions at Stanford. And
Stanford's bad.
We expected Stanford to take a big step back this year. We expected a lot of regression from the Cardinal. And not that Penn State's a great baseball program, but how many times throughout our college baseball life have we seen teams that have no business beating Power 5, perennial contenders? We saw a ton this weekend. Penn State is not a baseball program. They're not a team that is going to be making any kind of noise to play in Omaha. Not by any stretch of the imagination. But I don't think Stanford is either. They got walloped in the transfer portal and the draft this year. And I think they're going to have Matt Scott throwing. It's just, for me, they shouldn't be laying minus 445 against anybody. Penn State's plus 310. You'd think maybe they're going to get one this weekend. I think 310 for a quarter unit is not terrible because low risk, high reward. And there's a good chance Matt Scott has a bad start. There's a good chance Stanford doesn't hit. Maybe Penn State shows up one time, and there you go. You cash it. You cash it out.
That one did stick out to me. I do think Matt Scott had a really bad outing. His Sierra was 0.84, so he actually should have done better than what he did. I like him. I backed him last year in the Super Regionals. He's a good pitcher. You may be donating money on Penn State, but I can't fault you for it. I saw the line and thought the same thing. Stanford shouldn't be laying that big of a price to anybody. I mean, they just lost to UNLV.
Yeah, I would
But
definitely agree.
I'm
Last
not going,
one.
which it's not saying a lot, but I'm not going to be surprised at all if Stanford wins this game.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, we're talking about a team that you're getting plus 310 on. You throw a little
Right.
sprinkle on. I mean,
Yeah.
chances are they're probably gonna be like plus 4.5 on the run line.
I'd
That's a better.
rather back to Penn Quakers than Penn State, though.
Well, Penn was a good team last year. What do you mean? You
I know.
feel like that's a big, a big, I don't know, a big deal. It's not a big deal.
What's the other one? What's the other one you want to talk about?
Last one, Gonzaga against Vanderbilt. Gonzaga gave UCLA a run. Gonzaga's plus 270 at Vanderbilt. Do you think Vandy loses a game here? They have not looked good. We both don't like Vandy.
Who is Vandy's Friday night guy now that Carter Holton's hurt?
They threw Grayson Carter, who walked the ballpark. Vanderbilt should have lost the series. They won on Friday night, which ended up being the series win because of a fluke, non-caught, gimme fly ball. It was a can of corn. The guy lost it in the light or the sun or whatever he lost it in, and it dropped in for a base hit, and Vanderbilt won. And then they lost Saturday, and then, Devin Petrell came out, big dick energy Sunday, and then they just blew him off the field.
Here's the problem. Gonzaga's team pitching has a 9 ERA. That's not good, Johnny. Vanderbilt's is not good either. It's a 5.6. But listen, Vanderbilt, it's an SEC school. They're not going to let Gonzaga come in and take this series. They may get one, but I doubt it.
That's what we're talking about, dummy. We're talking about one game. I think plus 270 is fair. Maybe if you want to save it for Saturday.
Wait and just bet the run line because Vanderbilt can't score.
I think between Friday and Saturday, it's not out of the realm of possibilities to see Gonzaga take one. I don't think they would take Sunday. I think Vanderbilt's going to be one of the best Sunday teams all year because you're going to have Devin Petrell. Well, most likely, unless they move the rotation around a little bit. Saturday could be Bryce Cunningham again. We don't know. But Gonzaga plus 270. And obviously the run line is going to be one to keep an eye on because that is looking like a plus 3.5 kind of play for Gonzaga. I'm not officially putting it out. I'm just merely pointing out something that you could take a look at if you want to go in the way of a bigger underdog.
Yeah. I like it. I would bet the run line, though. I think Vanderbilt's going to be in a lot of scrappy dogfights that they'll just have the depth in the bullpen to outlast whoever they play. But, I mean, I think FAU, if you would have bet the run line on FAU in all 3 games, you probably would have won all 3.
Not the last one.
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, not the last one.
Okay, 2 out of 3.
Yeah, exactly, for sure. Would have won them. I should have won the money line.
And actually, you probably would have gone 4-1 because Dayton and Eastern Kentucky, I've got to believe that they were more than plus 2.5 versus Eastern Kentucky.
Yeah, I would think so. Okay, Matt, we won't keep anybody here any longer than we already have to. I'm going to give out my full Friday card as of right now. It's going to be Oregon State money line, ECU money line, Arizona money line, Auburn money line half unit, Penn State sprinkle, and add Indiana in there as well. I tweeted it out this evening at minus 150. I don't know if I'm going with anything else. I feel like I'm set. I'm not really getting into the parlays just because the teams that I'd want to back are just they're too big in price. You're having to bet a parlay of 4 top teams to scratch plus 150 odds. Not really feeling it.
No, I don't love – I mean, as good of a weekend of baseball it is, I don't love just a whole lot. I think I went over my card already, but just for the people. Let's say it again.
You did. It's all about
Oregon State, TCU, Indiana, Iowa. That's it. That's all I love.
That's it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter. I'm at _JohnnyVTV. He's at Grissom on X. We appreciate you guys tuning in. I will be back tomorrow or Saturday with Doug Ziefel. So don't forget to tune in and show us the same love that you show when I'm with Matt. You got NCAA Insiders. Give us a little plug here. The podcast is looking great, bro. It's really looking
Thank you.
strong.
Doing our live show tomorrow, possibly from Globe Life Field. We will see. Check in around, I think, 1 Eastern we should be on. And then we're on with Jeff Davis, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors tomorrow at 2 Eastern as well. So we'll be around. I'll be much more sober.
Yeah, I know. You're a little half in the bag, my friend. I'm looking forward to getting on with Jeff Dawson as well. I haven't spoken with him since we did it last year. I know it was like a 3-man box, me, you, him, and then sometimes it was a 4-man. We had our boy Q in there.
Yeah, it was good times.
But make sure you send a lot of pictures and tweet out a lot of stuff. I want to see what's going on live from the ballpark. And, maybe if you want to be a Saint, live stream on Twitter the game that's going on for those people that don't want to pay for Flow Sports.
Maybe. We'll see. I've got we're in the suite right behind home plate. And I've got media credentials. What idiot gave me media credentials to go on the field?
God damn, you got a suite.
Should be a good time. Should
this
be a
kid
good time.
Large.
We just do what we can. Grow the game, Johnny. Grow the game. I'm going to go have another espresso martini nightcap. Thanks.
Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week. Best of luck this week with your bets. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter to get every additional play we added that we did not touch on the game. See you next week.